You should get out of my house. This isn't your home anymore." That was the sentence that ended my old life. My son said it to me on the front porch of the house I had owned for over 40 years. Not a stranger, not a landlord. My son, Marcus, the child I carried, fed, protected, and prayed over when the world was not kind to black boys. And he didn't just say it, he enforced it. I am Elizabeth May Carter. I am 68 years old. I am a black woman, a widow, and until that morning, I believed that even if I had lost my husband, I had not lost my place in this world. I was wrong. The problem I faced was not confusion. It was betrayal, carried out deliberately by my son and his wife. They wanted my house. They wanted my silence. And they wanted me gone. I had just returned from Alabama after burying my childhood friend Loretta Brown. 4 days of grief will soften a person, make them slower, gentler. I didn't know those 4 days were all they needed. The taxi dropped me off just after 10 in the morning. The magnolia tree still shaded the yard. Daniel's porch swing still rocked with the breeze. For one foolish second, I thought everything would be fine. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. Harder this time. Nothing. That's when I noticed the lock itself. New. Silver. Not mine. My heart began to pound, not with fear yet, but with disbelief. I knocked. Once. Twice. Hard enough that my knuckles stung. I heard footsteps. Voices. Then the door opened. Marcus stood there, blocking the doorway with his body. Behind him was Sierra, arms folded, lips already curled in a smile that had no warmth in it. "You should get out of my house. This isn't your home anymore," he said again. Louder now, like he wanted the neighbors to hear. I stepped forward instinctively, my hand reaching for the doorframe. "Marcus," I said, "move. I live here." That's when his face changed. "Don't touch anything," he snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." I tried to step past him. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was thinking about Daniel's ashes on the mantel, about my wedding photo, about the quilt his mother stitched with her own hands. Marcus shoved me, not hard enough to look dramatic, hard enough to hurt. I lost my balance and went down on the porch, my knees slamming into the wood. Pain shot up my legs and settled deep in my back. I gasped, the sound humiliating and raw. "Oh my God!" Sierra laughed. "Look at her!" I sat there, stunned, my palms pressed to the floor, trying to breathe through the pain. I had not been on my knees like that since I was a girl in church, praying for things I didn't yet understand. "Please," I said. The word tasted like blood. "Marcus, please. Just let me get my things, your father's things." That's when Sierra stepped forward. She went inside and came back carrying a cardboard box. My box. I recognized it immediately. The blue one I kept in the hall closet. She tipped it forward. Daniel's watch hit my shoulder, then his cufflinks, then the folded flag from his funeral. Each item struck me and fell at my feet like scraps. "You want your memories?" she said, laughing. "Here, take them." I reached for the flag, my hands shaking. "That's not yours," I said. "That's his. That's my husband." Sierra leaned down close enough that I could smell her perfume. "If you don't behave," she whispered, her voice sharp and sweet at the same time, "we'll have you put in a nice facility. Somewhere safe, somewhere you won't be a problem." I looked up at Marcus then. I expected something. Shame, hesitation, a flicker of the boy who once cried when I burned his birthday cake. Instead, he laughed. Not loud, not wild. Just a short, amused breath through his nose, like this was all ridiculous. That sound did something to me. It hurt worse than the fall, worse than the threats, worse than the box of memories dumped at my feet, because in that moment I understood that he had chosen her cruelty over my dignity, and he was comfortable with that choice. I gathered Daniel's things slowly, each movement sending pain through my knees. No one helped me. They stood there watching, like spectators at a show. When I finally stood, I felt old in a way I never had before. Not weak, discarded. I didn't scream. I didn't curse them. I picked up my overnight bag, looked once more at the doorway that had been mine for decades, and turned away. The taxi driver was still there. He saw my face and didn't ask questions. "Diner on Route 14, I said quietly. As we drove away, my body ached, but my mind cleared. This hadn't started that morning. It started when they moved in, temporarily. When Sierra asked about my paperwork. When Marcus stopped calling me Mom. When conversations about money happened without me. I had seen the signs. I had ignored them out of love. Sitting in that diner booth, holding a mug of coffee I barely touched, I made a promise to myself. They thought changing the locks made the house theirs. They forgot who raised Marcus Carter. I am not a woman who disappears quietly. And if they wanted to see what happens when you push a mother too far, they were about to learn. If you felt her pain, like this video and comment where you're watching from, someone near you might be watching too. I sat in that corner booth at Mel's Diner for almost 2 hours, watching the explainer the waitress refill my coffee, even though I'd barely touched it. I stared into the black surface of that cup like it held a map of how to move forward. My knees ached. My back burned from where I'd hit the porch. But the worst pain settled behind my ribs, in that quiet space where grief makes a home and refuses to pay rent. The ache of betrayal is heavier than a coffin. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. What I felt was something deeper, something older. I felt invisible, erased, like I had died and no one sent flowers. The waitress, a young girl with braids and nails too long to be practical, leaned in and asked if I wanted pie. I almost said yes, just to feel a human kindness that wasn't calculated. But I shook my head, thanked her, and stood slowly, wincing as I stretched out the stiffness in my legs. When I stepped outside, the Georgia sun was blinding, too bright for a day like this. I flagged down a cab and gave the driver the address to Riverbend Baptist Cemetery. I hadn't been back to Daniel's grave in months, but now I needed to see him. I needed to say some things I hadn't said, not at the funeral, not in the quiet nights since. The ride was short. I walked the last stretch alone, my hand trailing along the tops of headstones like I was greeting old friends. Daniel's marker sat under the shade of a dogwood tree, simple and clean. Just his name, the dates, and the words, beloved husband and father. I sat on the bench nearby and pulled Daniel's watch from my purse, one of the few things Sierra hadn't damaged when she threw the box at me. I held it in my lap and whispered, "You wouldn't believe what your son did." A breeze rustled through the leaves, and for a second I let myself pretend that was Daniel sighing beside me. I told him everything. About the lock, about the shove, about the look in Marcus's eyes that didn't belong to the boy we raised. "You remember when he used to crawl in our bed during thunderstorms?" I said softly. "When he was too scared to sleep alone? I used to hold him so tight, Daniel. I used to think there was nothing on this earth I wouldn't forgive him for." I stared at the stone until my throat burned from holding back tears. "But this?" He let her threaten me with a nursing home. He pushed me down, Daniel, like I was some nuisance. I stayed there until the sun dipped lower. Then I stood, kissed my fingers, and pressed them to the stone. "I'm not done," I whispered. Not by a long shot. On the ride back into town, I asked the driver to stop at Harlan's Hardware. It was a small, family-run place just outside downtown, the kind of store where they still knew your name. I didn't need anything yet, but I wanted to talk to someone who remembered who I used to be. Mr. Harlan himself was behind the counter. He looked older than I remembered, but still sharp. When he saw me, he smiled wide. "Libby Carter," he said. "Haven't seen you in a while." I smiled back, but not with my eyes. "Been laying low. You here for some garden tools? Summer soil's coming in strong." "Not quite," I said. I leaned in, lowered my voice. "You still got the name of that locksmith? Reuben?" Mr. Harlan's smile faded into concern. "Reuben? Yeah, he's still around. Retired mostly, but he'll answer if it's you." I nodded. "Good. I need him." He didn't ask questions, and I was grateful for that. He jotted the number down on a yellow sticky note and handed it over like a secret. I left the store with the number burning a hole in my purse. That night, I slept at the home of Sister Eunice, an old friend from church. She lived alone, always had, and kept a guest room that smelled like lemon oil and old Bibles. When I walked in, she didn't say much, just hugged me, led me to the kitchen, and made cornbread and greens without asking what had happened. Some people know when words aren't what you need. Over dinner, she finally looked up from her plate and said, "Your boy messed up, didn't he?" I stared at my hands. "He didn't just mess up. He broke something. Then you fix it." "I'm tired, Eunice." She reached across the table, laid her hand over mine. We don't stop fixing things just because we're tired. We fix them because we still can. You still can. I nodded, slowly, not ready to believe it, but ready to try. The next morning, just after sunrise, I called Reuben. His voice was groggy. "Miss Carter, you all right?" "No," I said, "but I've got a job for you." "What kind?" "The kind that puts a mother back in her home." He was quiet for a beat. Then he said, "I'll bring my tools. Be there in an hour." I stood in the guest bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. My lip was cracked. A bruise had started to bloom on my hip. I combed my hair back tight, put on my church shoes, the black ones with the silver buckle, and pinned on the brooch Daniel gave me our last Christmas together. I didn't look like a woman going to war, but I was. Reuben pulled up in a dusty blue truck, toolbox in the back. He didn't say much when he saw me, just gave a nod, and we got in. We drove in silence. When we reached my street, the neighborhood was still quiet. The air smelled like cut grass and morning dew, a place where nothing bad ever happens unless you know where to look. When we reached the house, Reuben looked at me. "You sure?" "I'm sure." He got out, grabbed his tools, and I followed him to the door. The lock was still new, still not mine. Reuben bent down, examined it. "Won't take long." While he worked, I stood there, staring at my front door. My heart pounded, not from fear this time, but anticipation. He finished in less than 10 minutes, handed me the key. "Fresh set, yours alone, no copies." I held it in my palm like it was gold. "Thank you," I said. He gave me a look. "You all right, Miss Carter?" I smiled. "I will be, real soon." I turned the key. The door opened, and just like that, I was home. The first thing I noticed when I stepped back into my home was the smell. Gone was the warm scent of lemon wood polish and lavender sachets I tucked in every drawer. In its place was something sharp, artificial, like air freshener, sprayed to cover up something rotting underneath. The floors gleamed, but not in the way I remembered. It was all too sterile, too new, too not mine. I stood in the doorway for a moment, listening. Silence. They weren't home. Good. I closed the door behind me and locked it with the new key Reuben had made. Then I slid the deadbolt shut, turned off the porch light, and took a long, slow breath. It was still my house. That hadn't changed, but almost everything else had. The living room had been rearranged. My brown leather couch was gone, replaced by a pale gray sectional that looked like something from a magazine not lived in, not welcoming. My armchair, the one where Daniel used to fall asleep watching Braves games, was nowhere in sight. They'd put up abstract paintings, cold, meaningless things, the kind of art that screams, "Look how tasteful we are," while saying absolutely nothing. And my pictures, my babies, my memories gone. The mantel was bare except for a geometric sculpture made of gold, wire, and glass. I stared at it, then turned away. My fingers were starting to shake, so I clasped them together and kept walking. I moved through each room slowly, like I was visiting a place that used to be mine but had been sold to strangers. The dining table had changed. No more lace runner, no candle holders. Just a polished surface and chairs that looked too stiff to sit in for long. In the kitchen, they'd reorganized everything. My ceramic canisters, the ones with little hand-painted fruits, had been shoved into a plastic tub on the floor, their lids tossed nearby like they were junk. My cast-iron skillet, blackened with seasoning from decades of Sunday breakfasts, sat on the bottom shelf of a pantry, dusty and forgotten. I opened the fridge. Almond milk, kale, bottled green juice, labels I didn't recognize. No sweet tea, no leftovers in foil, no butter in a dish with my fingerprints on it. They had erased me, but not completely. Not yet. I walked down the hall to the master bedroom, or what used to be mine. They'd turned it into a spa retreat. Cream-colored bedding, silk pillows, a diffuser puffing out eucalyptus. There was a tray with crystals and tarot cards, like that nonsense could cleanse what they'd done. I opened the closet. All my clothes were gone. Not packed away, gone. My hand tightened around Daniel's watch in my pocket. I felt heat rise behind my eyes but pushed it back down, muted. I would cry later, maybe. Or maybe never again. Right now, I had work to do. I climbed the stairs to the attic. They thought I was too old to reach up there, maybe. Thought I wouldn't notice what they'd hidden. But I had boxed those memories myself. I knew where to look. In the far corner, behind a stack of unused yoga mats and unopened appliances, I found the bin. Inside, my photo albums, wrapped in a blanket, Daniel's funeral program, the quilt his mother made for our wedding, a box of letters he wrote me during his Navy years, my life reduced to one plastic container and pushed into the dark. I brought it all back down, set it gently on the couch. My couch, even if it wasn't mine anymore. Then I went to the guest room, the room they'd shoved me into after temporarily moving in. It looked like a storage closet now. Boxes piled everywhere. Broken furniture, my old reading lamp cracked at the base. They hadn't even bothered to donate things, just buried them. I stood in the doorway and whispered, "You buried the wrong woman." By the time I'd seen everything, the sun had begun to rise fully. Gold light spilled across the living room floor. I made a pot of real coffee. Strong, no syrupy flavors. I sat at the kitchen island and drank it slowly, and I started planning. First, I needed evidence. I went back to the master bedroom and checked Sierra's vanity drawers. Sure enough, tucked behind her hair products, I found a folder. Inside, paperwork, real estate listings, loan inquiries, and one partially signed contract to sell the house to a flipper in Atlanta. The address matched mine. No power of attorney, no legal authority, just arrogance. I took pictures of every page. In the guest room closet, I found an unopened box addressed to Sierra, marked statement enclosed. Inside, credit card bills, 6 figures worth of debt, multiple cards, late payments, high interest, all of it hidden in my house, under my name. I photographed those too. They weren't just planning to sell my house, they were gambling with it. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt focused. Next, I called my lawyer. Mr. Dixon had drawn up Daniel's will. He was nearly retired now, but I trusted him. "Elizabeth?" he said when he answered. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said. "But it will be." I explained everything. Calmly, clearly. He didn't interrupt. At the end, he asked, "Are you safe?" "Yes," I said. "And I'm ready. I'll prepare everything. We'll get ahead of this. Thank you." After I hung up, I opened the front closet and found my church heels scuffed, worn, but still mine. I placed them by the door. A reminder, I was standing tall, even now. Then I made one final call. To Carla Jenkins, my neighbor across the street. She'd lived there since the ADS, raised her own boys, and knew every soul on the block. "Carla," I said, "I need a favor." "Anything, baby," she said. "You say the word." I told her everything. She gasped. "Lord have mercy. I need the number for that cleanup crew your cousin used when her tenants trashed her rental." Carla didn't hesitate. "I'll text it right now." I thanked her, then sat in the living room, my living room, and watched the light move across the floor. They had taken my memories, repainted my walls, filled my refrigerator with strangers' food. But I was back. And now, I wasn't just going to take my house back. I was going to make sure they never forgot who it really belonged to. By the time the sun reached the highest point in the sky, I had made my decision. They were going to come home eventually. That much was certain. But I would not be waiting behind the door, sobbing or screaming. No, I had something else in mind. Something quiet, something lasting. Something that would remind them, long after I was gone, that they had messed with the wrong woman. I started with their things. Not mine. Not Daniel's. Theirs. I went room to room with a notebook in one hand and sticky notes in the other. Everything that didn't belong to me got marked. Furniture, electronics, ugly paintings, boxes of beauty products, protein powders, shoes that had never seen real work. I labeled it all with one word: remove. Once I had the full list, I called the cleanup crew Carla's cousin recommended. The owner, a middle-aged man named Ray, answered after 2 rings. "Yeah, ma'am," he said after hearing my request. "We handle full disposals, no problem. You got a skip or you want curbside?" "I want the curb," I said. "Loud and clear." He chuckled. "Understood. When?" "Today." There was a pause. "You in a hurry?" "I'm evicting ghosts," I said. "And I don't wait on ghosts." He laughed again. "You got it. We'll be there in 2 hours." I hung up and stared at the front door. My heart thudded steady in my chest, not fear, something more like clarity. By 2:15, a big white truck with orange lettering pulled up in front of the house. 4 strong men hopped out and greeted me like I was royalty. I suppose a black woman in pearls and pressed slacks, standing tall with a clipboard, sends a certain message. "All right," Ray said, "point us to the junk." I opened the front door. "Follow the stickers." They didn't ask questions. They didn't flinch. They moved with the rhythm of men who'd done this 100 times before, lifting, wrapping, wheeling. Sofas, mirrors, dressers, boxes of clothes, a makeup vanity covered in fingerprints and spilled powders. All of it gone in less than an hour. When they reached the master bedroom, Ray raised an eyebrow. "This whole set too?" I nodded. "Every inch. I want nothing that came with her energy left in that room." "Understood." I walked through the house behind them, wiping down surfaces as they cleared them. It was like an exorcism. Each thud of furniture hitting the curb sent something loose from inside me. Not vengeance. Something closer to relief. At one point, I spotted Sierra's purse on the counter. A luxury brand, price tag still inside. I took the tag out and taped it to the front. Remove. Then I packed what little remained Daniel's items, my photo albums, a few old cookbooks, and placed them carefully in the sunroom. That was my sanctuary now, my corner of peace. By 4 p.m., the front lawn looked like a garage sale from hell. Designer shoes next to empty supplement tubs, broken electronics and tangled cords, a pink velvet headboard leaning against the mailbox like a monument to poor taste. I paid Ray in cash and tipped each worker an extra 20. Before they left, he tipped his cap to me. "Ma'am, you call us anytime." "I hope I won't need to," I said. "But I'll keep the card." They drove off, their truck rattling away down the street. I stood alone on the porch, arms crossed, watching the wind ruffle Sierra's pile of silk scarves and Marcus's gym bag like the house itself was spitting them out. It was a little after 5 when their car turned onto the street. I didn't move. Sierra saw it first. Her jaw dropped. She slowed the car to a crawl. Marcus slammed the brakes and jumped out before the car had even come to a full stop. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, eyes wide. "What did you do?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even flinch. I said, calmly, "I removed the trash from my house." He stared at me, chest heaving. You can't do this. This is our stuff." "No," I said. "It's your stuff, and it doesn't belong in my house." Sierra stormed over, heels clicking against the sidewalk, face twisted. "You're crazy. This is illegal." "Feel free to call the police," I said, folding my arms. "Tell them how you changed the locks on your mother's house, forged papers, and pushed her down on her own porch." Her eyes darted. She hadn't expected that. "You don't know what you're doing," she hissed. "We were trying to help you." "Oh?" I tilted my head. "By selling my house behind my back to pay off your debt?" Marcus stepped in then, raising a hand like he might actually try something again. I didn't step back. "You so much as touch me again," I said, "and I swear by every name on our family Bible, I'll drag you to court so fast your head will spin. There's a new lock, a new lawyer, and a camera pointed at the door." He froze. Sierra scoffed, grabbed one of her bags from the lawn, and hurled it at the ground. "This is elder abuse," she barked. "You're the one who needs help." "I agree," I said. "That's why I got help. From the law, from God, from every neighbor watching you right now." They turned. Sure enough, Carla Jenkins was standing across the street with her phone up, filming. "So smile, baby," Carla called out. "You're gonna be famous." Marcus cursed under his breath. Sierra screamed. I looked at them one more time and said, "You have 10 minutes to take what you can carry. After that, the city comes for bulk pickup, and they don't care how much your bag cost." I turned and went inside, closed the door, and locked it. From the kitchen window, I watched them scramble arms full of clothes and shoes, shouting, tripping, throwing things into the back seat. A pair of heels tumbled into the storm drain. Sierra screamed again. Marcus ignored her. They left before the 10 minutes were up. No goodbyes. I stood in the quiet that followed, hands braced against the counter. This time, I let myself cry. Not for them. For me. For Daniel. For the version of my son that no longer existed. For the peace I used to have and the peace I was now reclaiming. Then I wiped my face, stood tall, and made a pot of tea. Because in this house, my house, there would be no more poison, no more ghosts. Only truth, only healing, only me. The morning after the purge, I woke before the sun. For the first time in months, I woke in peace. Not in a stiff guest bed, not to the sound of Sierra's blender, or Marcus pacing on speakerphone, shouting about cash flow and liquid assets. I woke to silence, clean, still, mine. I lay in bed a few minutes longer, one hand on the quilt Daniel's mama stitched the year we got married. It smelled like cedar and lavender, like home. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the wood floor cool under my feet, and stretched. My knees still ached from the fall, but they held. That was enough. I had no room for weakness, not now. I made my way to the kitchen, barefoot, still wearing the cotton nightgown Daniel loved. Poured myself coffee from the new machine Carla's daughter had dropped off the night before. Said it was a gift. Something that ain't touched by Sierra's energy, she joked. The bitterness of the first sip was perfect. I stood by the window and looked out. The front yard was clean again. Ray and his men had returned after Marcus and Sierra sped off, hauling away what little was left. The bulk pickup team from the city came early, but they didn't need to lift a finger. Ray had done it all. I tipped him extra. Now, the grass looked bare. The porch, freshly swept, glowed in the morning sun. But more than that, something inside me felt different. Still sore, still angry, but no longer afraid. That was new. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mr. Dixon, my lawyer, standing with his briefcase and a firm smile. He looked sharp in his gray suit, though I could tell the Georgia heat didn't agree with him. "You're early," I said, stepping aside. "I know how you like to get things done before lunch." He sat at the dining table, my table now, free of Sierra's tacky centerpieces, and opened the case. "Everything's ready," he said. "We filed a protective order, emergency injunction on the deed, and I pulled the loan application Marcus tried to submit." He handed me a copy. I scanned it. Forged signature, wrong middle initial, a lie from top to bottom. My hand shook slightly as I held it. "They were going to sell it out from under me," I whispered. He nodded. "And now they won't be able to." "Will there be charges?" "Eventually, yes. Fraud, forgery, possibly elder abuse." That last part made my stomach clench. I hated that term. Hated being seen as fragile, as someone others needed to defend, but I also knew that was how the system worked. And for once, I was using that system for me. Mr. Dixon pulled out another document. "Here's a formal eviction notice. Not that you need it after yesterday, but it's good to have the paper trail." I laughed softly. "Honey, I already threw their things to the curb." He grinned. "I heard. Carla's video got 100 shares overnight. You're a local hero now." I rolled my eyes but smiled. "God help me." He packed up and stood. "Anything else?" "One thing," I said. "Add a clause to the deed. If Marcus tries to come for this house again, he gets nothing. Ever." He hesitated. "That's serious, Elizabeth. So is betrayal." He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll draft it." After he left, I stood in the quiet and exhaled. One more brick in the wall between me and the people I once called family. I didn't leave the house that day. I didn't need to. Neighbors came by one, like it was an unspoken ritual. First was Carla, dropping off a peach cobbler with a sticky note. "You got fire in you, Liz. Don't forget it." Then came Mr. and Mrs. Rollins from 2 doors down. They brought folding chairs and sat on the porch with me like old times. Talked about the weather, the church bake sale, and how their granddaughter had started college. Normal things, sweet things. But underneath it all was a shared understanding. They'd all seen it. They'd seen the way Marcus yelled. They'd seen Sierra shove past me in the yard. They'd heard the whispers and ignored them, unsure whether to step in. Now they were showing up. Not to fix it, just to witness. To tell me I wasn't alone. Later that afternoon, I sat with my scrapbook. The old one, brown leather, worn soft around the edges. I flipped through page after page, Marcus as a baby, Daniel in his Navy uniform, our wedding, our first Christmas in this house. I paused on a photo of Marcus at 10, smiling wide with a missing front tooth, one hand holding the fishing rod Daniel had given him. He used to love us. He used to see me. Somewhere along the way, that boy had disappeared. And in his place stood a man who'd smiled while his wife threw Daniel's medals at my feet. I closed the book and pressed it to my chest. I would never unlove him, but I could stop letting that love make me small. That evening, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello? Silence. Then, Mama. My stomach dropped. Marcus. His voice was low, not angry, almost broken. Mama, I don't know what happened. You pushed me, Marcus, I said, my voice even. You let her threaten me. You stood there and laughed. I know, he whispered. I know. I messed up. I wasn't thinking straight. Things got out of control. I said nothing. I wanted to fix our money problems. That house, it's beautiful, Mama. I thought we could use it right, flip it, start over, but Sierra, she had other plans. She pushed me too. You let her, I said, and you don't get to use her as your shield. He was quiet for a moment. Can I come by? Talk? Just you and me? I took a breath. No, I said gently. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You need to think about what you did, what you chose. Mama, I'm not your home anymore, I said. I'm my own home now. I hung up. Then I stood, poured myself another cup of tea, and walked to the porch. The sky was golden, the wind was soft, and I was free. That Sunday morning, I dressed in my best navy blue suit. Not for show, for armor. I hadn't missed a church service in over 30 years unless I was sick, mourning, or out of town. But for the past 2 months, I hadn't set foot inside the walls of Greater Mercy Missionary Baptist. Not since Marcus and Sierra took over my house. I was too ashamed back then. Too broken. I'd imagined the looks, the whispers. Maybe some of them had seen the way Marcus handled me on the porch. Maybe others had just guessed. But now, let them look. Let them see what a woman looks like when she survives fire and comes out polished like gold. I arrived just before the choir started warming up. The parking lot was half full, but I still caught a few heads turn as I stepped out of my car. I walked with purpose, no cane, no hesitation, even though the bruise on my hip still whispered with every step. The front doors opened, and there stood Deacon Harris, tall as ever in his crisp gray suit. Well, look what the Lord blew in, he said, eyes wide with surprise and something like pride. Morning, Deacon, I replied, tipping my head. He held the door open with a flourish. We missed you, Sister Carter. I missed me too, I said quietly. Inside, the sanctuary still smelled of lemon oil and old hymnals. The stained glass poured colors across the pews. The organ was humming. A few folks turned, doing their best to make the glances discreet. Some smiled. Some looked guilty. One or two whispered. I didn't stop. I walked right down to the third row, the row Daniel and I always sat in, and took my seat. Alone, but not lonely. A few minutes later, Sister Eunice slid in beside me. She didn't say anything at first, just reached out and gave my hand a squeeze. I squeezed back. The choir opened with, His Eye is on the Sparrow, and I felt my throat tighten. I had sung that song at Daniel's funeral. I closed my eyes, let the voices lift me. Not to escape, but to remember. I wasn't just here to show face. I was here to reclaim space. Because they had tried to take my house, but this place, my faith, my seat before God, untouchable. After service, the fellowship hall buzzed with potluck smells and low conversation. Sister Geneva, head of the ushers, came over with 2 paper plates in hand. I made your favorite, she said, mac and cheese with the crust like you like it. She handed me one and sat beside me. We were wondering where you been. I was at war, I said plainly. She blinked. With your health? No, I said. With my son. Her hand tightened around her fork. You don't have to explain, baby, she said after a pause. Some of us already knew. Not everything, but we heard, saw some things. I nodded. Now I want folks to know the rest. And I told her, not all the pain, not all the history, but the truth. That Marcus and Sierra tried to steal my home, that they forged signatures, that they threatened me, pushed me, that I took it all back. Her eyes filled with fire. Lord have mercy, she muttered. That boy done lost his mind. He lost something, I agreed. But I didn't. The rest of the afternoon passed with more food, more hugs, and a quiet parade of women older, wiser, sharp as glass under silk who pulled me aside to say, You're not alone. My nephew tried that same thing. My own daughter stopped calling me Mama after she married up. Tell your story, Liz. Don't let them erase you. It was the most held I'd felt in months. Not just seen, but witnessed. When I got home that evening, the mailbox was overflowing. I hadn't checked it since I reclaimed the house. Inside were credit card offers, a few bills, and one manila envelope with no return address. I opened it cautiously. Inside, a single page, typed, "To whom it may concern, we regret to inform you that your son Marcus Carter is no longer employed with Zenith Finance Group. His recent legal involvement has brought reputational harm to our firm. This letter serves as formal termination." At the bottom was a signature and a sticky note. Heard the story. Justice has a funny way of coming around. No name, no initials, just truth. I held the letter in both hands, not knowing what to feel. It wasn't satisfaction, not joy, not revenge. Just weight, like something had finally landed after hanging in the air too long. He had lost his job, not because I wanted him punished, but because his choices had real-world consequences. And maybe, for the first time, he'd have to look at himself and see what he'd become. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and locked it. Some truths don't need framing. They just need remembering. That night, I walked the house slowly, room by room. I touched each wall, opened each window, lit a candle in the sunroom and placed it by Daniel's photo. I even played one of his old records, Otis Redding, scratched and sweet. Then I sat on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, and listened to the night sounds. Crickets, a distant train, someone laughing 2 doors down. It was the sound of a neighborhood still breathing, still watching, still mine. I sipped sweet tea and thought about the stories we don't tell, the slow betrayals, the quiet courage, the ways black women like me have had to fight not with fists but with presence. We don't raise our voices. We raise our roots. And tonight, mine were deep, unshakable. It was nearly a week after church when Marcus came back. Not with a loud bang, not with threats, not even with Sierra hanging on his arm. He came alone, quiet, unshaven, wearing a hoodie he hadn't touched since college and jeans that sagged like they'd been slept in. I saw him from the living room window, just after dusk. He stood by the gate, unsure. I could have left him there, could have turned off the porch light, closed the blinds, let him stew in whatever shame or silence brought him back. But something in me, maybe maternal muscle memory, maybe foolishness, moved my feet toward the door. I stepped outside, didn't invite him in, just crossed my arms and waited. He finally looked up. "Mama," he said. His voice was scratchy, hollow. I didn't know where else to go. I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't Sierra's folks buy a condo in Buckhead?" His jaw tightened. "We're not together right now." I stayed silent. He shoved his hands in his pockets like a boy again. "You heard about the job?" I did. He looked down. "They said my name was in the news. Not a full article, just mentioned in the court filing. Consequences," I said. "They tend to stick when the truth finally shows up." He nodded slowly. "I deserved that." He looked older, not just tired-aged. That kind of wear that doesn't come from time, but from unraveling. "Why are you here, Marcus?" I asked. "Because you lost your job? Because Sierra threw you out? Or because you actually feel sorry?" He licked his lips, eyes wet now. "I'm here," he said, "because I remember who I was before I let her talk me into thinking this house was just property. I'm here because I laid hands on my own mother, and I can't breathe right with that on my soul." I narrowed my eyes. "You didn't just lay hands. You laid judgment. You tried to erase me, Marcus, for a quick fix." He looked away. I let the silence hang. Then I said, "You hungry?" His head jerked back toward me. "What? Did you eat today?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Come on," I said. "But you eat on the porch. You're not ready for my table yet." I brought him a bowl of my chicken and rice, steaming, fragrant, with cornbread on the side. He sat in the porch chair like a child sent to time out, head bowed over the food. His spoon clinked against the ceramic, hands trembling as he ate. I sat across from him, watching, waiting. When he finished, he wiped his mouth and sat back, eyes red. "I was wrong, Mama." "Yes," I said. "I thought if we just fixed our money, everything else would follow." I thought. Sierra loved me. She loved what you could take. He swallowed. She said I was weak for letting you boss me around. Said no real man lets his mama control his future. I snorted. And what future did she offer? A pile of debt and a dream built on my foundation. I know, he whispered. Now. He leaned forward. I miss you. I miss this house. I miss Dad. I can't sleep. I looked at him hard. Missing something doesn't mean you deserve to have it back. I'm not asking for the house, he said quickly. Not even a room. I just want to fix things. Fixing starts with you, I said. Not here, not now. He looked crushed. So I can't stay? You can't even step inside, not until you've done more than cry over what you lost. I stood. You'll go now, I said. And maybe you'll come back someday, not as a son asking for forgiveness, but as a man who's earned it. He stood too. His shoulders slumped, but he nodded. I'll try, Mama. I nodded back. I hope so. He walked down the steps slowly. At the gate, he turned. I love you, he said. I didn't say it back. Not because I didn't feel it, but because love, real love, wasn't words on a porch, it was actions, over time, with roots. He'd have to dig for that. And this time, I'd be watching. After he left, I sat back down, sipped the last of my tea. The porch light buzzed softly above. Inside, the house was still warm, still full of light, still mine. And outside, the world kept turning. But I didn't feel small anymore. I felt whole. Even if the world outside my door hadn't changed, I had. 2 days passed after Marcus's visit, and the house was still mine. There were no knocks on the door, no calls in the middle of the night, no tearful pleas from Sierra or any of her slick-talking cousins. I half expected retaliation, some childish tantrum thrown by people who only knew how to take. But what I got was silence. And it was divine. I spent that Tuesday morning on my knees in the garden, not out of weakness, out of praise. Daniel had always kept the roses trimmed, but since he passed, I hadn't had the heart to touch them. They'd grown wild, reaching over the fence like they were trying to run away. I clipped them back, whispering to each stem like an old friend. You still here, I said, to one deep red bloom. We both still here. The sun was gentle on my shoulders. The breeze carried the scent of soil and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle. It was a quiet moment. But I've learned, quiet doesn't mean safe. I had just gone inside to wash up when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, Hello? Mrs. Carter? Yes. This is Officer Jennings from the Clayton County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling regarding a report filed by one Sierra Whitaker. I felt my stomach drop. What kind of report? She's alleging that you illegally disposed of her personal belongings and committed property damage. I took a slow breath, kept my voice steady. Did she mention that she was squatting in my home after changing the locks, or that she attempted to sell the house under my name? There was a pause. Then, a different tone entered his voice. She did mention a property dispute, yes, but we also saw that you filed for an emergency injunction and provided video footage. I exhaled. Is there a reason you're calling, officer? He cleared his throat. No charges are being pursued at this time. We're just following up due to standard protocol. Miss Whitaker was advised to seek civil counsel. I smiled tight but honest. Thank you for letting me know. Of course, ma'am. Have a good day. I hung up. Then I laughed, loud and full. Sierra had tried again. One more petty little swing. And once again, she'd hit nothing but air. Later that evening, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Not many folks rang anymore. They called or texted. This was old-fashioned. I peeked through the peephole. My heart skipped. Ryben, my neighbor's grandson, 22. Worked part-time at the church, part-time at the auto shop. Quiet boy, respectful, the same one who changed my locks when I took the house back. He stood on the porch in a gray hoodie, hands in his pockets, like he wasn't sure he should have come. I opened the door. Evenin', Reuben. Evenin', Miss Carter, he said. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all. You okay? He nodded, then held up a small white envelope. My granny asked me to bring this to you. It's from the church committee. I took it, curious, slid it open right there on the porch. Inside was a folded letter. Dear Sister Carter, we were moved by your testimony and strength. The Women's Ministry would like to invite you to speak at the upcoming Sunday Forum on Resilience and Faith. We believe your story can lift others as it has lifted us. With love, Sister Geneva and the Mission Circle. I read it twice, then looked up at Reuben, blinking hard. You okay, Miss Carter? He asked, concerned. I'm just grateful, I said softly. They want me to speak. He smiled. They should. You shook the dust off this whole neighborhood. I laughed. That's so? Yes, ma'am. And a lot of folks been saying it. He turned to go, then paused. And I saw Marcus the other day. He came by the shop. I stiffened. He's looking rough, Miss Carter. Like he don't know who he is anymore. I swallowed. Sometimes that's the only way a man learns who he was meant to be. Reuben nodded slowly. He asked about you. I waited. I didn't say much, just told him the truth. What truth is that? That you ain't bitter. You just done. I let that hang in the air a while. Thank you, baby, I said. He smiled again. Anytime. That night, I pulled out a yellow legal pad and wrote the first words of the speech I'd give at Sunday's forum. Not a sermon. Not a confession. A testimony. One line stayed with me the longest. Sometimes peace doesn't come when the storm ends. It comes when you stop letting others carry the thunder into your house. I underlined it twice. Then I closed the notebook and turned off the light. I didn't know what would happen next, if Marcus would change, if Sierra would come crawling again, or if another storm would knock at my door. But I knew this. I was ready. This house, these walls, this heart still standing, still open. But only for those who came with truth in their hands. Sunday came with a golden hush, the kind of light that makes everything look like a promise. I dressed carefully, not in the navy blue suit from the last service, but in Daniel's favorite ivory with pale lavender trim. I hadn't worn it since the last Resurrection Sunday he was alive. That year, we danced in the kitchen before sunrise, gospel on the radio, biscuits in the oven. He spun me around like we were kids again, laughed when I stepped on his foot. I could still hear the music. This time, I danced alone, only a little sway while buttoning my jacket, but my heart moved with it. I pinned my brooch at the collar, mother of pearl, and dabbed a little lilac perfume behind my ears. My reflection stared back strong. Older, yes, weathered, but unbroken. I was no widow clutching sorrow. I was a witness standing in her own light. At Greater Mercy, the sanctuary was already full. Families filled the pews in bright colors. Children squirmed in lace socks and bow ties. The choir shimmered in gold robes. Sister Geneva stood by the pulpit, fanning herself with the program, smiling like she'd just seen God himself. When I walked in, the hush followed me. It wasn't cold. It was reverent. I walked slow, confident. Third pew, right side my place. People nodded, whispered, "Morning, Sister Carter. You look radiant. We're proud of you." Sister Eunice took my hand as I sat. "Today's the day." I squeezed her fingers. The music swelled. Pastor Bell gave the sermon half fire, half balm. "Some stones," he said, voice rising, "some stones roll away after you've been buried alive. Some tombs crack open not because the world loves you, but because the Lord says, 'Get up.'" Heads nodded, feet tapped. I felt it down in my bones. I had gotten up, and now I had something to say. "Let us welcome Sister Elizabeth May Carter to the floor," Pastor Bell said after the final hymn, to speak her truth in her own words. Applause. Some knowing, some eager, some nervous. I walked up to that podium with my note cards in one hand and Daniel's wedding band in the other slipped onto a chain around my neck. I placed the cards down, didn't look at them. "Good morning, church," I began. "Good morning," they replied in unison. "My name is Elizabeth May Carter. I've been a member of Greater Mercy for 44 years. I've been a wife, a mother, a caregiver, a prayer warrior, and just recently a survivor." A pause. You could hear the air shift. "I'm here today not to name names or lay blame, but to tell the truth. Because silence keeps shame alive, and I've had enough of both." I looked around the room. I raised a son, loved him fiercely, gave him everything I had, and one day he came for the very roof over my head, tried to take the house I built with my late husband, sell it out from under me, and lock me out of my own life. Gasps. Not dramatic, not performative, just real. Some of you might have heard whispers. Some saw what happened and didn't know what to say. Let me say it for you. It was wrong. I leaned forward slightly, and I let it happen. Not all at once, but in inches. Because love makes you excuse things. Because loyalty blinds you. Because we, as black women, are told to sacrifice until there's nothing left but bone and breath. A few murmurs of "that's right" and But one day I stood on my own porch, bleeding dignity, and I realized I hadn't failed as a mother. I paused. Let that settle. I had succeeded, and he had chosen wrong. Eyes widened. Some nodded. He chose greed. He chose manipulation. He chose a woman who told him his own mother was a burden. Silence. But I chose me. Applause began soft at first, then stronger. I changed the locks. I cleaned house physically, emotionally, spiritually. I remembered that peace is not something you ask permission to have. You claim it. I smiled gently, and I came back here to this church, this sanctuary not to be pitied, but to remind someone in this room that you can survive betrayal. You can reclaim joy, and you can stand, even if you have to stand alone. People rose. Not all, but enough. Tears. Claps. Hushed amens in corners of the room where women held purses close, and memories even closer. I'm still his mother, I said, my voice quiet now. But I am also Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is done being quiet. After the service, the line to hug me stretched down the hall. Women whispered their stories in my ear, husbands who drained accounts, children who turned cold, siblings who showed up only to steal. I didn't counsel. I didn't fix. I just listened, held their hands, said, "You are not crazy, you are not wrong, and you deserve peace." One woman, Miss Thelma, hugged me so tight I thought we'd both crack. "You said the words I've been choking on for 10 years, she sobbed. I kissed her cheek. "Then let yourself breathe now, baby." That night, I sat in my sunroom with a slice of peach pie someone had insisted I take home. Otis Redding played low on the stereo. Daniel's photo glowed in the candlelight. I hadn't fixed everything. Marcus was still lost. Sierra was still bitter. But I had found something precious. My name, my voice, my place, and no one could take that again. Not while I had breath, not while I had roots. It came in the mail 3 days later. A plain white envelope with my name in Marcus's handwriting, slanted, sharp, still with that same little curl at the top of the M he had since 3rd grade. No return address. I stared at it for a long while before opening it. Not because I was scared, because I didn't know which version of him I'd be meeting this time. The angry son? The ashamed one? The little boy who used to pick dandelions for me from the church lawn? I slid a butter knife under the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The paper shook, just a little. "Mama, I've started this letter over 6 times. I don't know what the right words are, and maybe I don't deserve to find them. But I'm trying. That's what I want you to know first. I'm trying. Since I left your house that night, I've been staying with a friend from work. Sleeping on a sofa. No job, no car. Sierra took most of what we had when she left. It's been quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I've been sitting in that quiet instead of running from it. I watched your church speech. Somebody posted it online. Mama, I cried. Not because I felt attacked, but because I saw you. Like really saw you. And I remembered who you were before I stopped listening. The woman who taught me how to speak full sentences before preschool. Who stayed up sewing costumes for school plays. Who worked 2 jobs when Dad got sick. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a person. I saw you as an obstacle, a weight. That shames me more than anything. I didn't write this letter to beg. I'm not asking for the house, or your forgiveness, or even your trust. I don't deserve any of that yet. I just wanted you to know that I've started therapy, that I'm working temp jobs, that I'm trying to build a version of myself that you wouldn't be ashamed to see walking down the street. And I miss Dad. God, I miss him. I wish he were here to smack some sense into me like he used to. But I think maybe, if he were here, he'd tell me to stop trying to impress people who wouldn't lift me up when I fall. I don't expect anything, Mama. I just wanted to say, I hear you now, and I'm sorry. Marcus. I set the letter down slowly. My throat burned. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there with the weight of it, heavy in my chest, like a wound being pressed not to hurt, but to heal. Because it didn't undo anything. Didn't reverse the nights I slept, curled up on the sofa, or the bruise on my hip, or the shame of watching my son stand next to a woman who spat at my love. But it was a crack of light in a door I had shut with both hands. I folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box on Daniel's bookshelf. The same one that held our vows, his funeral program, and Marcus's kindergarten handprint. Not forgotten. Not forgiven. But remembered. That afternoon, I went to the community center to help Sister Geneva with her voter registration drive. I needed to get out of the house. To feel useful. To be useful. The building buzzed with chatter, young people filling out forms, older folks asking questions. I worked the folding table by the door, offering pens, smiles, answers. "Excuse me," came a soft voice. I looked up. A girl, barely 20, nervous eyes, holding a baby on her hip, stood in front of me. She looked familiar. "Are you Mrs. Carter?" "I am. I saw your video online. The one at church. My mama sent it to me." "Oh?" I smiled. "What did she think?" She cried. I blinked. "Did she now?" She said it made her feel like she could start over, that she didn't have to stay stuck in that house with my daddy throwing words like bricks. My chest ached. "What about you, baby?" She shifted the baby to her other side. "I'm registering to vote, but mostly I just came to see you, to say thank you, for standing up, for surviving." I reached across the table, gently touched her hand. "Baby girl, surviving isn't enough. You've got to live." She nodded. "I'm trying." I pressed a pen into her hand. "That's a start." That night I made Daniel's fried chicken recipe for the first time in years. Just for me. But I set 2 plates anyway, one for him, one for me. Old habit. Old love. The house felt full again. Not because someone was coming, but because I was still here, living, rooted, ready. It was nearly midnight when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. Not the impatient kind. Not the kind that comes with threats or police urgency. No, this was a different sound. Almost uncertain. Like someone wasn't sure they should be there at all. I sat up in bed. My first instinct was to grab the bat Daniel had kept in the closet since the ADS. Atlanta may have changed, but I hadn't forgotten what it meant to be a black woman living alone. You don't answer late-night knocks without prayer in your chest and something heavy in your hand. I moved quiet, turned on the porch light, and peeked through the curtain. Marcus, standing with his hands raised like I might shoot through the door. I didn't open it right away. I unlocked the deadbolt, cracked the door just enough to see him clearer. "Is someone dead?" I asked. "No, ma'am." "Then why are you knocking on my door at midnight like you got no home training?" He looked sheepish. I'm sorry. I should have called." "Yes, you should have," I said. "So I'll ask again. Why are you here?" I didn't know where else to go. I leaned against the frame, studying him. He looked better, shaved, wearing clean jeans, a sweatshirt that didn't hang like regret. He held something under his arm, a canvas bag. I eyed it. "What's in the bag?" He unzipped it, pulled out papers. "I got a job, Mama, full-time. Warehouse supervisor. Not much, but it's honest." I didn't respond. He kept going. "I also brought receipts from the last 3 weeks. Rent, groceries, therapy sessions." "Why?" "Because I'm not just saying I'm changing. I'm showing you." I opened the door a little wider. Still not an invitation, just less resistance. He looked up at me, eyes wet. "I'm not here to stay. I know I ain't earned that. I thought maybe I could sit on the porch a minute." I studied him, then nodded once. "The porch is public." I brought out 2 cups of chamomile tea, set one down in front of him, then sat in the rocker across from his. The night air was cool. Crickets sang like they had no shame. A train rumbled faint in the distance. Marcus held the mug in both hands like it was holy. "I wanted to come sooner," he said. "You didn't. I was scared you'd slam the door." I shrugged. "You wouldn't be the first man who deserved that." He chuckled lightly. "Fair." We sat in silence a while. Then he said, "Do you remember when I was 9, and you caught me lying about that broken window?" I nodded. "You said the bird flew in." He smiled. "You made me write an apology letter. To the window. You needed to practice honesty." He looked over at me. Serious now. "I broke more than a window these past few months." "Yes, you did. I don't expect you to trust me again, Mama. But I'm here to rebuild." He pulled something else from his bag. A small box, wrapped in brown paper. I found this at the bottom of one of the boxes Sierra threw out. Thought you might want it. I took it carefully, unwrapped the paper. Inside was a photo frame. Our family, taken in the front yard the year before Daniel passed. Marcus holding a grill spatula like a trophy. Me laughing. Daniel, in his red apron, smiling wide. I hadn't seen that picture in years. My hands trembled. I don't know if I can be the man Dad hoped I'd be. He whispered. You're not him, I said. You don't have to be. But you do have to choose who you are now, every day. He nodded slowly. Then, voice shaking. Can I come back? Not to live, just to help. Fix what I broke. I looked at him for a long time and saw the boy he used to be. Not fully returned. But reaching? I'll think about it, I said. You keep showing up like this, clean, honest, humble, and I might just believe you mean it. He smiled, eyes wet. That's more than I hoped for. I stood. Time to go. Porch visits don't last past midnight. He stood too, picked up his mug. Thanks for the tea. He walked to the steps, then turned back. I love you, Mama. This time, I looked him square in the eye. And I said, I love you too, Marcus. I always have. That don't mean I'll let you walk over me again. He nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less. He walked into the dark, his silhouette swallowed by the quiet. I stood a moment longer on the porch, then picked up his mug and carried it inside. Set it in the sink, turned off the porch light, and whispered to the night, God, don't let me be foolish, but don't let me be stone. It was a week later when Sierra came back. Not in secret. Not in shame. She came like a storm with no forecast, bright, loud, and full of lies. I was in the backyard hanging laundry, letting the sun do its work on the sheets Daniel once called heaven on earth when I heard the slam of a car door. I turned, heart already wary. She stood by the front gate in heels too high for real life, sunglasses big enough to hide her soul, and a purse I suspected had more debt than dollars. Her smile was wide, fake as her acrylics. Miss Liz. I didn't move, didn't wave, just waited. She walked up the path like it still belonged to her, like the house might just open its mouth and swallow her back into comfort. I was hoping we could talk, she said sweetly. I raised an eyebrow. You were hoping I'd forget everything you did? She giggled, actually giggled. Now come on, ain't no need for hard feelings. My voice dropped cold. You locked me out of my house, Sierra. You threw my dead husband's memories in the trash. You pushed me while my back was turned. I was upset, she snapped, the syrup gone from her voice. Marcus told me... I cut her off. Don't say his name like he's your shield. She paused. That got her. Because Marcus had stopped answering her calls. I knew that from the message she left 2 nights ago. I'd overheard it on the old answering machine I never bothered to replace. Marcus, call me back. I swear we can fix this. Fix what? The damage? The betrayal? The price tag she put on everything sacred? I stepped forward, voice low and sure. What do you want? Her eyes flicked toward the house. The couch and the Keurig. I paid for them. I laughed, out loud, big and bitter. You think you can waltz into my yard and claim furniture? Her face twisted. It was in the prenup. That couch was mine. I stared at her, then said, Do you know what I paid for that couch? She blinked. Every inch of that cushion soaked in grief. Daniel died on that couch. Marcus sobbed on it the night he lost his first job. That couch held generations. She folded her arms. Still doesn't mean it's yours. You think because you had a ring and a key you had claim to everything? You think this house was just drywall and paint? I took a slow step forward. This home was built with sweat, with prayers whispered into plaster, with laughter carved into floorboards. You? You were a visitor. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. She did worse. She smirked. Doesn't matter. Lawyers say we can still file civil. Marcus was on the deed, half his, half mine. I stared hard, then walked inside, slow and deliberate. I came back with a manila envelope, tossed it at her feet. Inside, the official court ruling, emergency injunction, removal of Marcus's name based on forged documentation, full ownership restored to me. She didn't bend to pick it up, just stared. I didn't know, she muttered. Didn't care either, I replied. You thought your smile and his cowardice were enough. She finally bent down, snatched the envelope, and flipped through the pages. And I watched it happen. The moment she realized she'd lost not just a man, not just a house, but her leverage, her access, her plan. She looked up, her voice shaking. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not being cruel, I said. I'm being clear. She stepped back. He'll come back to me. Maybe, I said, but this house won't. She turned then, shoulders stiff, walked to her car without another word. But before she opened the door, she turned around. You'll die alone in that house. I smiled. I'd rather die alone in my truth than live surrounded by liars. She slammed the door, tires screaming down the street like she was fleeing her own failure. And I stood there, the wind tugging gently at my clothesline, Daniel's shirt dancing in the breeze. Later that evening, I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. She came, I said. I know. She called me 6 times. You answer? No, ma'am. Silence stretched long. She's desperate, he said. You think she'll really try to file? She can try, I replied, but I'm not scared. I am, he admitted. That's because you're still healing, I said. Fear's just a sign you got more growing to do. He exhaled. Thanks for telling me. She looked you in the eyes and told me I'd die alone. His voice dropped. She said that? She did. He was quiet a moment. Then, you'll never be alone, Mama. I didn't cry, but my hand trembled just a little as I held the phone to my ear. Prove it, I said. I will. And this time, I almost believed him. That night, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for mourning. For closure. The last ghost had come. Had rattled the windows, screamed her last insult. And the walls held firm. Monday morning arrived with crisp sunlight and a cool breeze that slid through the curtains like an old friend whispering, time to begin again. I made my tea strong, black, no sugar, just the way Daniel used to like it. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the backyard, I opened a notebook titled The Fixer's List. It wasn't fancy, just a spiral-bound pad with the front corner chewed by time. But the inside? It was sacred. I wrote in it the day Marcus was born. Wrote in it when Daniel was diagnosed. Wrote in it the night I sat alone on the steps after Marcus and Sierra slammed the door behind them. This morning, I opened to a fresh page. Monday, paint porch rail. Tuesday, check leak under kitchen sink. Wednesday, clean out Daniel's workshop. That last one made my breath hitch. I hadn't touched the workshop since the funeral. It sat in the backyard like a sealed tomb, tools untouched, sawdust still clinging to the floor, his flannel jacket still draped over the chair like he'd just stepped away. But it was time. Not to erase him. To honor him. Marcus arrived around 10 with a toolbox and 2 paint cans. I didn't ask him to come. He just did. No fanfare, no speech. Just walked up the porch steps with a quiet, "Morning, Mama." I nodded. "Hope you brought your good knees. That railing's a beast." He smiled. "I brought Advil." We worked in silence, the kind that isn't awkward but familiar, like 2 people stitching the same cloth from opposite ends. He sanded while I scrubbed. I painted the left post while he took the right. Every so often, our hands would nearly meet in the middle, and we'd both pretend not to notice. At one point, I saw him pause, brush in midair, looking out at the street. "Remember when I fell off my bike out there?" he asked. I nodded. "Knocked the wind out of you. You picked me up and made me walk the bike back. I cried the whole way. You learned not to ride downhill like a fool again, didn't you?" He chuckled. "I did." He dipped the brush again. "Sometimes I wish I could rewind to that kid." I looked over. That kid never left. He just got quiet waiting for you to listen again. He didn't speak, but his hand trembled slightly with the brush, and that said enough. Later that afternoon, he followed me to the backyard, curious. "You really gonna open the workshop?" he asked. I nodded. "Been long enough." He stopped at the door, hesitated. "You want me to do it?" I shook my head. "No, baby, this one's mine." The key was rusted but still turned smooth. I pushed the door open slowly, the creak loud like a sigh from the past. Dust floated like memory. The smell of wood and old leather wrapped around me like Daniel's arms. I stood in the doorway a moment before stepping inside. Everything was just as he left it. Jars of screws lined up in size order. Pegboard tools hung with military precision. The old stool where he'd sit and fix anything, broken clocks, radios, even my mother's ceramic angel from 1964. I ran my hand over the workbench. My breath caught. Marcus stood behind me quietly. After a moment, I said, "He used to say, 'Everything broken has a blueprint for repair. You just gotta see it.'" Marcus took a deep breath. "He said that to me too. I just stopped believing it applied to people." "It does," I said softly. "But you have to be the one to pick up the tools." He nodded slowly. I turned and picked up a rag, began wiping down the bench. He joined me, quietly organizing the drawers. And just like that, we worked. Side by side, not to restore the past, but to prepare space for the future. That evening, we sat on the back steps with lemonade and the satisfaction of sore muscles. "Thanks for letting me help today," Marcus said. I took a sip. "You weren't helping me. You were helping yourself. This house will heal you if you let it." He nodded. "I want to come back tomorrow. Work on the sink." I smirked. "Better not flood my cabinets." "I'll bring towels." We chuckled. And for the first time in a long time, his laugh wasn't laced with guilt. Mine wasn't strained by caution. It was just joy, pure and unspoken. That night, I sat by the window with the fixer's list in my lap. Checked off the porch. Checked off the workshop. And next to Wednesday, clean out Daniel's workshop, I added a note in smaller script. Marcus stood beside me. Because healing isn't one moment. It's a thread. Woven, knotted, tangled, but still whole. Still possible. Tuesday morning brought the sound of dripping. Steady. Mocking. It came from beneath the kitchen sink, a slow, hollow tap like a metronome of neglect. Marcus had promised to come early. I hadn't even changed out of my nightgown when I heard the knock at the back door. Not the front, he knew better than to act like a guest now. I opened the door, tea mug in hand. "You're early," I said. "You said early," and I took it as gospel. I moved aside to let him in. The leak's gotten worse. He crouched down in front of the sink like a mechanic approaching a stubborn engine. "Let me see what we're working with." I leaned against the counter, sipping tea while he pulled open the cabinet doors and examined the pipes. "I brought replacement parts," he said, gesturing to a small duffel at his feet. "And a towel, like I promised." I smiled behind my mug. "Look at you, keeping your word." He glanced back. "I'm trying." He stayed under the sink for about 15 minutes, grunting, unscrewing, muttering under his breath like Daniel used to. I watched, quietly, letting the rhythm of his work fill the kitchen. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like my house had a heartbeat again. "I think this pipe here cracked at the joint," he said. "Probably from pressure buildup. Might have been leaking for months." I nodded. "It started just before Christmas." He froze. "That long?" I was distracted. With Sierra playing Queen of the Manor and you doing your best impersonation of a stranger. His face flushed. "I'm sorry, Mama." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Some apologies are better left to actions. He kept working, head bowed in concentration. A drop of sweat slipped down his temple and landed on the floor. I handed him a towel. He looked up, grateful. When the pipe finally loosened with a loud click, he grinned like a boy catching his first fish. "There it is." He held it up like a trophy. It was rusted and cracked, clearly long past its prime. I stared at it, then whispered, "Just like Sierra's hold on this house." He chuckled. "You got jokes today." I earned the right. While he installed the new fitting, I turned my attention to the counter-sorting mail, wiping crumbs, stacking clean dishes. We worked in silence again. Comfortable, steady. Then Marcus broke it. "Mama, what are you going to do with this place when you're gone?" I didn't look up. "Planning my funeral already?" "No," he said quickly. I want to know. I don't want it to be a mystery when the time comes." I dried my hands on a towel and turned to face him. "This house is staying in the family." He looked up, hopeful. "But it won't go to someone who tried to sell it behind my back, or lock me out, or let their spouse treat me like trash." He nodded, ashamed. "It will go to someone who earns it, someone who respects it, someone who knows that it's more than just walls and a deed, it's memory, it's legacy." He swallowed. "I want to be that someone." I studied him, not just his face, his posture, his voice, the way he held the wrench not just with confidence, but care. "You're on your way," I said. "But this ain't a job you apply for. It's a life you build." By the time he finished, the drip had stopped. The undersink space was dry, clean, organized. He stood and wiped his hands. "Done." I crouched down to see for myself. Not a single drop. "You really did it," I said. He looked proud. "One pipe at a time." I nodded. That's how everything gets fixed. That evening, we sat in the living room. He asked if we could look at old photo albums. I hadn't opened them in years. Not since Daniel passed. Not since Marcus started fading from my life. We sat side by side on the couch, my couch, I reminded myself, and turned the pages together. There was Daniel in his army uniform. Me in that blue dress I wore to the church picnic. Baby Marcus with cheeks like dinner rolls. We laughed. We paused. He lingered on a photo of him as a boy, standing beside Daniel in the garage, both holding paintbrushes. "You think he'd be proud of me?" he asked quietly. I looked at the photo, then at him. "I think he'd be proud you came back, and that you stayed." Marcus didn't cry, but he did lean back, eyes closed, as if he could feel his father's arm across his shoulders again. When he left that night, he kissed my forehead like he used to as a teenager, heading out for school. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'll come by and start clearing the shed." I nodded. "Bring gloves. There's spiders." He made a face. I laughed. "Big ones." He pointed at me, backing down the steps. "You're setting me up." "No, I'm toughening you up." As he walked to his car, I stood on the porch and watched. Not to protect, not to monitor, but because I wanted to remember what it looked like when a broken thing started working again. And the house? The house felt still. Not empty, not haunted. Just at peace. The next morning smelled like fresh soil and old secrets. I stood at the kitchen window sipping my coffee, watching the small wooden shed at the edge of the backyard. It sat beneath the old elm tree, slouched slightly to one side like a tired man. Daniel had built it in '91, back when Marcus was still afraid of bees and I was still pretending I didn't need glasses to thread a needle. We used to keep garden tools in it, a rototiller, spare fence posts. One year, Daniel made it into a makeshift greenhouse. Another year, a paint studio. By the time he got sick, it was mostly storage junk, maybe, but sacred junk. Marcus arrived just after 9, holding a pair of heavy-duty gloves and a hesitant look. "You ready?" I asked. "Not even a little," he grinned. "Good. Let's get started." The door creaked open with the kind of moan that made you wonder what it had seen. Dust swirled. Cobwebs danced like curtains in a ghost house. Marcus coughed. "We should have brought masks." I handed him a scarf. "Use this, and don't touch anything unless you want to get bit." He tied the scarf around his face like a cowboy heading into a sandstorm. We stepped inside. Stacks of boxes teetered in one corner. A rusty lawn chair leaned against a shelf, one leg bent. Shelves lined the back wall, crowded with paint cans, oil rags, and tools whose names I'd long forgotten. But what caught my eye was the trunk. It sat dead center, like it had been waiting for us. Daniel's trunk. Dark oak, iron corners, initials burned into the lid. MC.D. Marcus knelt beside it. "I forgot about this." "I never did," I said softly. He hesitated. "You want me to open it?" I nodded once. The latch was stiff. He had to jiggle it, curse it, then finally click. The lid groaned open. Inside, time collapsed. Photographs, old letters, a folded flag from Daniel's army days. His first wallet, cracked and faded. The wrench he'd kept since his first job at the Ford plant. And tucked in the corner, wrapped in tissue paper, was the music box he gave me on our 10th anniversary. I reached in and lifted it gently. The tissue crinkled like memory. Marcus watched me wind it. A soft tune played a waltz Daniel used to hum in the garage. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I was 30 again, dancing barefoot in our bedroom, his hands warm on my waist. When the music stopped, I opened my eyes and looked at Marcus. "You want to know why I kept this shed locked all these years?" I asked. He nodded. "Because this was where I put the pieces of us I couldn't carry every day. Not because they hurt, but because they were holy." He swallowed. "I understand that now." I smiled. "Do you?" He nodded slowly. "I used to think memories were for old people, that they just cluttered everything. But now, I think they're what keeps us rooted. Exactly. We spent the rest of the morning sorting boxes. One held old holiday decorations, another had Marcus's school projects, papier-mâché volcanoes, spelling bee ribbons, a photo of him in a lion costume for the third-grade play. He laughed. I remember this. Sierra made fun of me for it. I didn't laugh. Instead, I picked up the photo and looked at it carefully. You were proud that night. Don't let her laugh undo that. He nodded, quieter now. Then he asked, Mama, when did you know she wasn't right for me? I stilled. The first time she came to dinner. She didn't say thank you. He blinked. That's it? That's enough. A woman who doesn't know how to show gratitude is a woman who doesn't know how to love beyond herself. He sat with that a moment. You think I can still be a good man? I turned and looked him full in the face. You already are. The question now is, can you stay one? By noon, we had cleared half the shed. I found Daniel's army boots, still polished. Marcus found a small metal tin labeled Rainy Day Fund, filled with coins and 2 old bills wrapped in a note. If I go before her, this is for Lizzie's garden bench. I cried. Right there, in the dirt, with spiders and dust all around. Marcus didn't say a word. He just sat beside me and held my hand. We didn't speak again until we'd closed the trunk, cleaned the last shelf, and swept the floor. Standing in the now open space, light pouring through the old slats, I said, I think we should make this into something. Like what? A quiet room, a reading nook, a place to sit and remember. He nodded. We could add a window. You offering to help? He smirked. Long as you keep the spiders off me. That evening, I added another line to my fixers list. Wednesday. Cleaned out the shed. Found Daniel's heart still beating in it. And below that, in softer handwriting, Marcus didn't run this time. The Sunday sun rose slow and gold over the neighborhood like a hymn humming through the leaves. I stood at my closet, running my fingers over old dresses, some too tight, some too faded, all stitched with memory. My hand stopped on a pale lavender dress with tiny white buttons up the front. Daniel always said it made me look like springtime in motion. I hadn't worn it since his funeral. But today, it called to me. Because today, I was going back to church not to speak, not to cry, but to testify in the quietest way, by showing up whole. Marcus pulled into the driveway right as I stepped onto the porch. He paused when he saw me. Mama, he said, voice soft with awe, you look like the Queen of Georgia. I smiled. And you look like a man who ironed his own shirt. Twice, he grinned, got the burn mark to prove it. He offered his arm. I took it. We hadn't walked into a church together in nearly a decade, but that morning, as the doors opened and the smell of wood polish and gospel filled the air, I felt something shift. The congregation noticed, of course. Heads turned. Whispers fluttered. There goes Liz Carter and her prodigal son. Let them whisper. Let them see. We sat in the third pew, just behind Sister Geneva, who turned and gave me the kind of nod only church mothers can give half approval, half don't you dare fall backwards. Pastor Freeman started the service with a smile. Saints, he said, today is about new beginnings. I nearly laughed out loud. Of course it was. After service, they came in waves. Old friends, former enemies, folks I hadn't spoken to since the block party of '06. Some hugged me, some hugged Marcus. Some looked surprised to see us side by side. One young woman, no more than 25, took my hand and said, Your story changed the way I talk to my mama. I squeezed her fingers. Then it was worth telling. Sister Geneva pulled me aside near the lemonade table. You coming back to the women's group? She asked. Maybe, I said, if you promise not to rope me into any bake sales. No promises, she winked. Then she leaned closer. That boy of yours is showing up different these days. He's doing the work, I replied. She nodded. Takes a humble man to do that. I glanced across the lawn where Marcus was talking to Deacon Hill, laughing like a boy on the edge of something new. He's getting there, I said. That afternoon, back at the house, Marcus fried chicken. Not as good as Daniel's no one ever could, but good enough. We ate on the porch with sweet tea and potato salad, and the sound of wind dancing in the trees. After dinner, he pulled out a small notebook. What's that? I asked. My own fixer's list. I raised an eyebrow. He flipped through it. Install porch light, clean gutters, reseal windows before fall. He looked up. Figure out how to be a man my mama doesn't just love but respects. That one made me blink. Then I nodded. Good list. He hesitated. Would it be okay if I started bringing groceries by every now and then? Just small stuff. You trying to buy your way back in? He shook his head. I'm trying to learn how to give without expecting return. I looked at him long and hard, then said, You can start with coffee creamer. Vanilla, not hazelnut. He grinned wide. Noted. As the sun dipped low, casting the yard in gold, I stood by the garden beds Daniel had built. Some weeds had crept in. Life had a way of doing that. But beneath the clutter, the roots were still strong, still ready to bloom. Marcus came up behind me, quiet. Mama, he said, when do you think I'll be whole again? I didn't turn, just whispered, when you stop asking and start living like you already are. He nodded. We stood in silence, two shadows against the dying day. Not perfect, not healed, but together. And in this house, in this season, that was more than enough. It started with a loose floorboard. I was in the guest room, clearing out space for Marcus to move some things temporarily. He said, Just a few boxes, Mama, but I'd lived long enough to know what boxes turn into. As I swept dust bunnies out from under the bed, my toe hit something off, a hollow sound. I crouched, pressed gently, and the plank shifted. Beneath it, tucked into the crawl space between two beams, was a weathered envelope. No stamp, no name. Just my handwriting, from decades ago. I froze, hands trembling. I pulled it out, peeled open the seal. Inside was a letter I'd written to myself in 1985, the year Daniel and I almost divorced. I had forgotten about it completely. The ink had faded in places, but the words still spoke, loud and unshaken. Dear Lizzie, if you're reading this, you're still fighting, you're still trying, and I want you to know that matters. I sat back on the bed, tears slipping silent and hot. You built this life from scraps. You learned how to stretch $1 and a prayer into a home. You raised a boy who's full of light, even if he sometimes forgets it. Don't let pain make you small. Don't let silence replace truth. And if Daniel's gone, I hope you remember. He loved you more than he could say out loud. But you knew. You always knew. I pressed the letter to my heart. Marcus found me there 20 minutes later, still holding it. He knelt beside me. You okay? I handed it to him. He read in silence. Then he looked at me, not with pity, but with reverence. You wrote this when I was a kid? Right after you told me you hated me for making you eat lima beans. He smiled. I still hate lima beans. I swatted his arm. He grew quiet again. Why'd you hide it? I didn't want anyone else to find it. And maybe I needed to forget it until I needed to remember. He handed it back gently. That's how I feel about you, he said. I forgot how much I needed you. Until I broke. I didn't speak. Didn't need to. That evening, we framed the letter. Hung it in the hallway beside Daniel's photo. Marcus stared at it for a long while. I want to do something with this house, he said. My eyebrow rose. Like sell it? He shook his head quickly. No, never. I mean, turn it into something that lives. Maybe a community kitchen, or a place where folks can come talk, eat, learn. A legacy house. I blinked. That sounds expensive. He grinned. I'm not rich, but I can fundraise. I've been learning. I stared at him. This boy, this man was shaping into something steady, something beautiful. You think people will come? I asked. I think they already are. He pointed toward the front window. I looked. Outside, on the porch, sat Sister Geneva and two of the neighborhood teens, Tony and Kesha. They were laughing, drinking lemonade, swapping stories. I told them they could use the porch for tutoring, Marcus said. Just a couple afternoons a week. I shook my head in disbelief. Don't shake your head, Mama. He smiled. You're the one who taught me that this house had arms wide enough for more than just us. I sighed. Lord help me, I did. He leaned down, kissed the top of my head. You coming to the porch? In a minute. When he left, I walked to the hallway one more time, stared at the framed letter, then whispered, Dear Lizzie, you made it. It was the first day of spring when we placed the bench beneath the elm tree. Not just any bench, his bench. The one Daniel had dreamed of, saved for, written down in that dusty, rainy day fund envelope we found in the shed. Marcus built it with his own hands. Oak slats, iron arms, a carved backrest with Daniel's initials and a small engraving, "Still here." We positioned it near the old flower beds, where the daffodils were just beginning to peek through the soil like shy memories. I stood in the yard, arms crossed, watching Marcus wipe sweat from his brow, then sit on the bench like it was a throne he wasn't sure he deserved. "It's perfect," I said. He looked up, proud. "It's not as straight as it could have been." "Neither are most of us," I replied. He chuckled, tapped the wood gently. "You think he'd like it?" "I think he never left," I said. "Just passed the hammer to someone else." That afternoon, the porch filled again. Kesha brought brownies. Tony brought his little sister, who drew chalk hearts on the steps. Sister Geneva came with 2 folding chairs and a bag of boiled peanuts. Marcus grilled hot dogs in the yard. I made sweet tea and cucumber salad. The house was alive. Not loud. Not wild. Just full. Full of voices, laughter, hands passing plates, people who had once been strangers learning how to stay. The neighborhood, once quiet with suspicion, was growing warm again. Not just because of us, but because of what we chose to become. A home that welcomed. A story that forgave. A place that remembers. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned that soft, buttery peach, Marcus came to sit beside me on the bench. He didn't say anything at first, just breathed in the air, listened to the birds, watched the wind make waves in the tall grass. Then, finally, "I think I'm going to stay, Mama." I didn't look at him, just nodded. "You don't need to ask permission," I said. "You already came home." He was quiet a moment, then said, "I found a program downtown, teaches construction and mentoring, for ex-cons, recovering addicts, kids without direction. I want to sign up to help teach." My heart swelled. "I think Daniel just clapped from heaven," I said. He laughed, then added, "And I think I want to call it the Carter Fixers Foundation." I turned to him, surprised. "That's a big name." "It started with a small notebook," he smiled. We sat in silence a while longer. A wind chime on the porch sang a few high notes. The kind Daniel used to say reminded him of church bells. Later, after everyone had gone and the dishes were done, I sat at my bedroom window. The porch light glowed soft. The bench under the elm stood still and solid. "And Marcus?" I could hear him in the next room, humming while folding laundry off-key, but joyful. I closed my eyes and remembered. The girl I was, the woman I became, the son I raised, the battles we fought, the home we reclaimed, not by erasing the pain, but by making room for new joy alongside it, by letting the broken parts bloom. That night, I wrote one last note in the fixers list. House, healed. Heart, healing. Hope, returned. And underneath it, in Daniel's old fountain pen, "Legacy is not what we leave behind. It's what we pass on while we're still alive." This story reminds us that healing doesn't always begin with an apology, it begins with action. Betrayal may break a home, but it doesn't have to destroy it. Through quiet courage, dignity, and love that holds its ground, we can reclaim not just a house, but the heart of a family. True legacy isn't about what we leave behind when we're gone, but what we choose to repair while we're still here.